Okay. All right. Hi. This is Dr. Black. For the humanities class, the video on Mesopotamian art. Um, Sorry I couldn't be with you in class today. There were some medical things I had to take care of, but I will be back next week. We're getting this wrapped up. It is a process. Um, so anyway, this lecture is on Mesopotamian art, but it's not just, the point isn't just so that you can recognize Mesopotamian art. The point is to illustrate the ways in which the art reveals certain aspects of Mesopotamian culture that we've been talking about. So, hopefully, this will help you kind of get your head around some of the things that I've been discussing already. By the way, also, yes, I have a Zoom meeting with someone at not long from now to ensure that the book is online. So yeah, that's in the works. We're working on that. Anyway, okay. So I'm going to start you off by showing you a piece of Neolithic, New Stone Age art that is from prior to the Bronze Age, so before this period in Mesopotamia that I introduced in the last class. So this is Urfa Man, because he was found in the Urfa. No, I'm kidding. He was found at a place called Urfa, but that was just my little joke. He was found at a place called Urfa around 9000 BCE, so well before the invention of pottery, around 10, 11,000 years ago. That means probably right as or right before agricultural societies are really getting going. So he's a nice baseline for us to look at sort of the types of art that could be made by people who were not able to devote a large amount of resources to artisanship. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, think about the fact that in a society where some people do things other than growing food or gathering food or whatever, you're not responsible for your own food supply. Not directly, anyway. In a society where people do things other than that, every person who isn't a farmer is relying on someone who is. Does that make sense? I mean, ultimately, yeah, I eat a lot of processed crap, like everybody else, but ultimately, the food that I eat comes from farmers. So everything that I'm eating ultimately does come from people who are growing food. So if I'm free to teach philosophy and humanities rather than grow my own food, it's because someone else is growing more food than they need to feed themselves. Um, so those resources that they are producing, it is the resource surplus that gives me time, not only to teach, but time to learn the skills that I need in order to teach. And in order for me to gain those skills, I need people who can teach me. So that's more people who aren't growing food. People who can build and maintain libraries. So that's more people who aren't growing food. So on and so forth. So when you think about it, just for one person, for me, to be able to not have to grow food and to teach philosophy instead, there has to be a huge complex of people, a huge number of people who don't have to grow food. Um, that they have to be available to do other things like maintain the universities that I attended and to teach the subjects that I studied and to write the books and blah blah blah. So the fact that I have this skill that I'm using right now, hopefully, um, the fact that I have is this skill is available um, because we have a resource surplus, because we have enough resources that all of those people involved don't have to, all those people involved don't have to be growing food. So what that means is, um, what that means is for a high level of skill to be displayed, any kind of non-food growing skill, for a high level of non-food growing skill to be displayed, you need extra resources. You need to be able to grow enough food to support uh, someone learning that skill and probably learning it from someone else. So you need to be able to support enough food growing from them. You need to have enough extra materials that they can practice and throw away what doesn't work, so on and so forth. Earth of Man is very crude. It is clearly a representation of a person. It's not a great one. It's made out of stone. And I'm not saying it's terrible. It's better than I could do. But it is definitely a fairly crude representation compared to stuff that we're going to see. And that is because the time period that it comes from is a time period where there's not a lot of extra resources, where there's not a lot of extra time available, in other words, and resources available to support a high level of artisanship, to support the development of a refined skill in that sense. Okay, let's compare it to another piece real quick that comes from around 7,000 BCE, so a few thousand years later. Let's compare it to another piece. This is Sigid female, discovered in Syria around 7,000 BCE. So that's the 8th millennium. So a couple of thousand years after Earth of Man. It's shaped like a stone. It's still a new Stone Age and Neolithic piece of art. It shows a higher degree of subtlety and artisanship than you might see, than you see in Earth of Man. Maybe the Earth of Man piece was just, a student piece or something. It's possible, I guess, but we do have pretty clear evidence that by 7,000 BCE, there's more resources to go around. That is to say, there's more spare resources to support the artisanship, the development of the skill. You can devote more time to not being a farmer or a hunter-gatherer or whatever. You can devote more time to just learning how to shape stone into shapes that you like, into sculptures. And more people can do it. And the more people who are doing it, the better chance we have of finding a piece with a really high quality. Because not only can they cooperate and help teach each other, but also they can, they're just producing more pieces, and we can get a better chance of having one of them that looks really nice. So what we're seeing here between Earth Man and Seagate Female, in roughly the same area, probably the Fertile Crescent. We'll talk about that in a later class. What we're seeing here in roughly the same area over a couple of thousand years is development of artisanship. They're getting better at what they're doing because they are getting better at producing food and other resources that they need in order to support artisanship, in order to support the development of non-food producing skills. So, okay, hopefully that makes sense. I was going to say, are there any questions? Go back to video. Have it. It's hard to break. Okay. I'm going to show you another piece now that comes from around 4000 BCE. So right as or right before we're getting to the Bronze Age, a few thousand years after the several thousand years after Seagate Female, almost 5,000 years after Urfa Man, and this is a piece of pottery. That's already a step forward. The other two pieces were just shaped out of stone. This is shaped out of clay. That's a whole new set of skills and tools that have been developed. Again, because they had the extra resources, obviously. And it is decorated. Now, the decorations there's a little symbol on the decorations that has come to have an unfortunate meaning. Don't be jarred when I show it to you. I'm going to explain it and put it in context. Obviously, it doesn't mean what it means now. Not back then. That was a long time ago. So, okay. This is the Samara bowl found at Samara around 4000 BCE. I mean, that's when it was created, not when it was found. Although I'm sure someone might have found it back then. Where's my bowl? It's over there. Oh, okay. Anyway, sorry. The Samara bowl is pottery. You can see that it's nicely decorated. In the middle, there is an occult symbol that looks like a swastika. This is an ancient symbol. They're not neo-Nazis. 4000 BCE. No. This is an ancient symbol. A lot of cultures have some variation on it. It's meant to represent the sun. So what we have in the Samara bowl is we have a sun symbol right in the middle. We have things that look like exaggerated birds, like long-legged water birds or something, around it, and then fish. And then we have a pattern that looks like maybe grass or earth, and then something that, based on other things that we found, we know is meant to represent water around the edges. So the bowl is this kind of lovely representation of the whole world, of the sun right in the middle, with birds in the sky around it, and then fish, and then the earth, and then the water on the outside. Now, a couple of things about this bowl. First of all, I think it looks nice, except for the swastika thing. You could find something like this at, Pottery Barn. I think it looks nice. It's got a pretty sophisticated decorative pattern to it, which indicates a really high level of artisanship. They've really got their game on now. Even as we're at the point where we haven't even really picked up the Bronze Age, we're just getting really close to it. We're right on the edge of it, and already they're growing enough extra food that people who aren't farmers can practice pottery in a sustained fashion and in a large enough scale fashion that they can turn out pieces like this rather than just knocking off super crude scone-shaped statues like that. They can do something really sophisticated, scone-shaped statues like Urfa Man. Rather than that, they can do something really sophisticated like the Samara bowl. So I mean, that's pretty impressive. That shows, that tells us not just that they are getting better and they're developing the arts, but it tells us that they are developing agriculturally and they're developing in terms of their processes of acquiring and distributing resources, because otherwise they would not have had the resources available to sustain this level of artisanship, this level of highly skillful production of pottery. Okay, so that's one of the things I want to illustrate, or that I want you to understand here, is that when we're looking at Mesopotamian art, it's not just because we want to appreciate Mesopotamian art or something. You know, the Samara bowl is pretty, I guess, but Seagate Female doesn't do a lot for me. And Earth Man, I wouldn't put it in my house. We're not trying to just say, oh, what lovely art. We're learning something about these cultures and about sort of the degree of development and sophistication they had in terms of what level of artisanship they could support. So, okay. Let's shift our focus a little bit and let's talk about religion, religion as it gets expressed through art and architecture. A couple of things. Here is an artist's rendering of what the White Temple of Uruk would have looked like. Okay, Uruk was one of the earliest cities of Mesopotamia, of the Sumerian culture. Right there at the beginning of the Bronze Age, Uruk became a city. That is to say, it was a settlement. It became a city because it had a large non-urban or a non-farming population that was all gathered together to support the functions of the religious bureaucracy and the autocracy. You may remember how I talked about how bronze brought about the ability of a warlord, of someone powerful, to conquer his neighbors and to take control of all that agricultural production and create enough of a surplus under one control that they would need writing as a tool to keep track of it, which is how we get writing. Well, that person in charge is the autocrat, the AUTOCRAT, autocrat, the rule of the self-rule. The autocrat is a despot. The autocrat rules by force of will and force of power. It's not to say that the autocrat doesn't have laws. There are laws in an autocracy. It's just that the only reason the laws exist is because the autocrat decided they do. And the autocrat can change those laws at any time that they feel like it. And they can, if the autocrat dies, then the laws no longer apply. Those laws are no longer relevant unless the new autocrat decides to continue them. There is no rule of law in the sense that there is a law independent of the people running the society. The law springs from the will and the person of the autocrat, and the autocrat alone. So, what does the White Temple have to do with this? Well, a temple, any temple, back then, would have been a center of political and bureaucratic power. Remember what I said about how religion in ancient Mesopotamia was transactional. It wasn't about faith, it wasn't about belief, it was about getting stuff done. You kiss the asses of the gods, and the gods will do stuff for you if you're lucky, because it's their world and they run it, and you just hope that they're gonna you just hope that they're going to listen to you, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. Um, so temples weren't about teaching morality or saving souls or anything like that. Those concepts didn't really exist as such in ancient Mesopotamia. Temples were about uh, gathering sacrifices of wealth and property from people, and also enforcing the will of the autocrat. Because the autocrat was in charge due to the fact that people felt like he was one of the gods. And it was always a he. Eh. The autocrat was in charge due to the fact that people believed he was related to the gods, or that he was like the head priest. Oftentimes the term used is priest king. I don't love that terminology, even no one asked me, so we're going to use it. The terminology is priest king, sort of a high priest who is able to intercede with the gods, possibly because he has divine heritage. He's related to them, or so they believe. The autocrat, the autocrat is the autocrat is in charge by virtue of his religious ability or religious stature, and it is the religious bureaucracy, the priests and the temple guards, who are headquartered at these kinds of temples, who carry out his will and enforce his power over society. And they do that because the resources they have from the sacrifices. Their regime is funded by people bringing them stuff, and giving it to them in the hopes that they will ask the gods to intercede on their behalf. That's the whole deal. So they control all of the agricultural resources. They also get sacrifices, and they do this because they're able to do this because people think they are related to the gods and they can help get things done. That is the nature of this religious autocracy. And the White Temple was a symbol of that power, a symbol of that autocracy. It was a particularly impressive temple. It was set up on top of a natural mound that was shaped by engineers. And you can see in the artist's reconstruction of it there, it was very large. There are people there for scale. It was very large. It was clad in white stone. It was gleaming white. It could be seen for 20 miles in any direction outside of Uruk. The people of Uruk and the people traveling to it would see it, and they would know the power and the influence of the autocrat. They would be impressed. It would have been by far the most impressive structure on the planet at the time. And that's the kind of thing the autocrats do to bolster their credentials. Am I really related to the gods? Well, look what I built, right? Look at this amazing thing that I built. Could just anybody build that? Could Joe Schmo build that? No, I could. I'm the autocrat. Boom. So that's where we are. Now you'll notice that there are stairs that lead up, and then there's like a little ramp for taking heavier stuff up once you get to the stairs, a certain way up the stairs. There is, that's how you get the sacrifices up there. So the temple here, this temple and others, but especially this one, will have been well defended because it is a site of worship of the gods, for certain, but it is also a government center. It is a bureaucratic center, and it is a treasury where the sacrifices are stored and things like that. So it is this in this theocentric society, what you see is the coming together of the functions of running the the government, running the society, and worship of the gods, because in a religious autocracy, they're not different things. These are not separate functions. Okay. So let's look at another illustration in the art of how the theocentrism of ancient Mesopotamian society informed their culture. So this is called the standard of Ur. Now, a standard is something that you display in battle to let your side and the other side know who you are. It's so they can make sure that the troops stay cohesive, and your enemies know who they're up against. You're hoping to shake them, hoping to shake their confidence. This is called the standard of Ur because it's an artistic representation of a battle standard. It isn't a real one. You wouldn't have displayed this in battle, but it is a piece of art that is in a similar format, so to speak, to a battle standard. So, but it's called the standard of Ur, and it's called the standard of Ur. Brain fart. Sorry. It's called the standard of Ur because it depicts a battle and the aftermath of the battle. There's a war side and a peace side. We're looking at the war side. And you can see that it tells a little story. On the war side, on the bottom there, what you can see, I hope you can see it reasonably well, what you can see are chariots riding over people. In the middle, you can see captives in chains being led away by soldiers. And in the top, you can see some of those captives being brought by soldiers before someone in ceremonial robes who is very big and important. That person is the autocrat, the ruler. So it tells a little story about a battle that they had, the people of Ur. Ur is a different city than Uruk, which is annoying, but what are you going to do? It tells a little story about how they won the battle, and then they led away a bunch of captives, and then they presented the captives to the autocrat. Okay, awesome. So cool. Now, it's a very, even though the representation of the figures is a little bit crude, it is a very sophisticated piece of art. It's a box of wood that is inlaid with gold and lapis lazuli. Sorry. A blue precious stone that comes from the region. It's a very sophisticated piece of art in terms of skill and artisanship, and it is, it's an impressive piece of art. But we care about it because it illustrates something important about the theocentrism of ancient Mesopotamian society, and that is through the use of hieratic scale. Hieratic, hieratic scale. The word hieratic is derived from the term, or it's related to the term hierarchy. Hierarchy is an arrangement of things by their importance or significance. A hieratic scale is the depiction of characters based upon their importance and their significance, rather than realistic, quote-unquote, realistically. Let me talk about that for a second. I said quote-unquote realistically. I said that because, and that shows a humanistic bias right there. I said that because, think about it, if I want to draw something that looks realistic, I want to draw it so that it looks correct, it looks right to humans. It looks the way we see the world. right? If you're drawing something realistically, you're drawing it so that it looks like it would look in the real world if I look out there. But that implies, like, to whom, right? To whom does it look like this? Well, to other humans, right? Imagine if I wanted to draw something realistically and I painted it all in shades of gray, and you said, "Hey, that has color. Why did you do it all in shades of gray?" And I'm like, "I wanted it to be realistic." And you're like, "But it's not realistic. This stuff has color." And I said, "I meant realistic to dogs." See, if I'm using dogs as my frame of reference, dogs don't see color. If I'm using dogs as my frame of reference, then realistic is a picture with no color. If I'm using babies as my frame of reference, how does it realistically look to a baby? Everything is depicted from, like, 3 inches off the ground. It's all very slanty. When we say we want something to look realistic or accurate, we're talking about realistic or accurate from the point of view of other human beings on the earth. And when we say that the figures in the Skander Gavur do not look realistic, we mean from that same perspective. For instance, the people being run over in the bottom row are very tiny. Now, I assure you, the Skander Gavur was not a report on a battle against a bunch of very small people, against a bunch of kindergartners. The people they were fighting were full normal size. They were full regular everyday size. Likewise, the autocrat in the top row appears a head and a half taller than everybody else. And that's not how he really was. The autocrats in ancient Mesopotamia were not a race of giants. That's not the real situation. Why are the enemies of Ur depicted as small and the autocrat, the ruler of Ur, depicted as large? Because they are more important, or more or less important. The enemies are insignificant. They don't matter. And the autocrat does. He matters more than anyone else, so he's bigger than everyone else. That is hieratic scale. People depicted by their significance, their importance, rather than their quote-unquote realistic sizes. But why would we do that? Why would we depict people hieratically rather than as, in a way, how they look to humans? Remember what I said about theocentrism and compared to humanism. Ancient Mesopotamia was a theocentric society, not a humanistic society. It was a society where humans were considered an afterthought. The world that we lived in didn't belong to humans. It belonged to the gods and monsters who ran everything. It wasn't that we mattered. They matter, and we just happen to tag along. We're just sort of tagging along with them. So if we want to depict something like this battle standard, and we want it to make sense, and we want people to care about it, who are we referencing? Who are we making it for, in other words? Who's the audience? Well, the gods and monsters, right? Right? That's who matters. That's whose perspective matters. The reason why realistic art has color to it, in most cases, is because humans see in color. And humans are the people we are addressing with the art. We're saying, this, here, look. Look at this. And we want it to look right from a human perspective. We're not trying to address it to dogs. We're not saying we want it to look right to the dogs. Who cares if it looks right to them? It's not significant. So when we see the standard of Ur using hieratic scale, and when we see the standard of Ur using hieratic scale, and the depictions are by the importance or significance of the characters portrayed in it, we know that the audience of reference, the people that is being presented to, or the audience is being presented to, is not humans. This is not for our benefit, or at least it may be for humans, but we don't think that the standard being used, standard. We don't think that the yardstick, the measuring standard that we're using should include humans, because we're just not that important. We depict it the way it would look to the gods and monsters that run everything. The important people stand out, like their relatives, the autocrat, and the non-important people, like the non-worshippers who are fighting against Ur, they are very insignificant. So hieratic scale shows up in every theocentric society, historically speaking, and it goes away every time a society starts to turn towards humanism. So that's the super interesting part there. Societies that are strongly humanistic have a real bias towards presenting things on a human scale, presenting things that look correct to other humans. And societies that are non-humanistic, that are theocentric, have a real strong bias towards depicting things on a hieratic scale, in the way that they would matter to the gods and monsters that run everything. So we'll see this again in the European Middle Ages as humanism starts to fall off and the society turns to a theocentric model. We'll see this hieratic scale show up there too, and then go away again as humanism starts to come back. It's totally bonkers, and I love it. Anyway, so that's what we can learn from some Mesopotamian art. I just gave you a small sampling of it. There's a lot more Mesopotamian art, but we're not covering all of that right now. I just wanted to give you a very brief sample so that I could illustrate some of these points and answer the hieratic scale question, and also give you a few more hints on the autocracy question. Next time, we'll be in the classroom. I'll be back, thank goodness, and we'll be moving on to Egypt, and that'll be awesome. And I will see you